was just looking at our faces then and mirroring them on the intro where we all go, oh, I've got no idea what we're talking about. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Oh dear. Obviously I said something terrible.
I think it was Kat. If you watch. Kat says something. We're both like, oh, and then she's like, oh. Anyway.
Oh.
Anyway, let's see what you can come up with today.
That's not like us, is it? At all? No, not at all.
Well, welcome everybody. Catherine. Fucking hell. Oh, I shouldn't. Sorry. I've started already. It wasn't a full FU, it was an FRI. Just anyway, because Catherine has decided to take us down the route of another. Well, I'm going to call him a pseudoscientist, and I have a psychology degree, so I feel like I can say that. But yeah, Catherine is going to introduce us to Freud, which means that Kat better come in with the disclaimer ASAP.
Well, here we are, friends. It's History After Dark, and we are crossing the Rubicon. We're going to end our year. We're rage baiting you. We're rage baiting you into 2026. That's what's happening, friends. Welcome to this. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. This is History After Dark. We are going to swear. We are going to possibly make threats against a dead man. And there will be explicit content throughout. If you are in an open plan office with a judgmental boss who, frankly, if they disagree with this, though, get a new job, but also put a headphone in. If you are in a some kind of container, mayonnaise jar. If you're in a mayonnaise jar, mayonnaise jar, hip flask, thermos with a small child who is a problem. We call him Timmy. We've got mugs. Timmy is the kind of child that only has to hear one thing that's depraved once, won't say anything, locks it in his mind palace, takes it to school, and then asks his teacher, Miss Honey, what it's all about. Now, of course, God bless her, Miss Honey doesn't watch this inveterate filth, so she breaks the first cardinal rule of History After Dark, which is, if you don't know what it is, don't Google it. It's not for you, and that's fine. Everything's for everyone, but she does Google it because Timmy's asked a question. They always ask questions. And so she is now in the corner of the room, rocking back and forth, and you are on the hook for whatever therapy it's going to take to get her upright and verbal. And you've also got to answer why Timmy knows this unspeakably offensive thing. Put a headphone in. It should be abundantly clear from the title, from us, from what I've just said, what's going to happen here. At no point should any of you comment here or other social medias, anything along the lines of, oh, I do very much enjoy the history, but must you ladies swear so much because it's very indecorous and perhaps hysterical, first of all.
Perhaps hysterical.
First of all. Yeah, anyone who comes in with any reference to us being hysterical, shut your goddamn mouth before I shut it for you.
Well, what's that aggression you've got pent up there, Kat? Was there something in your childhood?
I will come to your house and I will smother you to death in your sleep. That's where the aggression comes.
Once again, we should perhaps have some talking therapy about this later.
I will kick you in the tits. Right. Here's the thing. At no point should any of you come in and say anything like that. We're also not going to pin the comment because we know that what you want is for that comment to be pinned so people can come and humiliate you publicly because that's your kink, which I'm sure Freud would have lots to say about that.
Yes, he would.
None of it true. But regardless, I won't kink shame you. They might. But what I will shame you for is kink without consent. That's never okay. If you want to go and see lovely Tiffany, Biscuits the Gimp at their Brighton basement, you can do so. Biscuits the Gimp is not furniture today. He's oscillating between the hamster wheel to charge the battery for the nipple clamps, and he's also polishing the arse gnome ready for Christmas. So it's going to be out.
It's going to be shiny.
He's going to be a shiny arse gnome in time for Christmas. So Santa knows where to fill your stocking. Keep your mind clean. Filth. Absolutely. We're not there yet. It's Santy. Come on. Whatever's going to happen, you have to pay your money and take your choice. Kink without consent is not okay. I hope after all of what I have just said, everybody here is an adult, and you better be for the rest of this because it's about to get wild. I can feel it in my waters. But we will never approve this being a drinking game. It will not be medical or legal advice. Please Do not sue. This is History After Dark. It's the last one of 2025, and we're going to go out with a furious bang? Question mark? Something's going to happen. Let's rock out with our cock out. Boom.
Okay, so I struggled to decide what to do for this one, and I kind of went with this. Like Philippa said, you know, we both studied psychology, and it's a classic, isn't he? And you know, remembered for all sorts of reasons. And it kind of followed a theme. I've kind of done sciencey based type people, haven't I? So I thought I might as well ruin it for Kat right till the very end. Now there is so
She's
much.
motivated me. That's what happened.
There is so much to this that I couldn't necessarily put absolutely everything in because it's very in depth. I'm sure some people will go, oh, well, you've missed this out and you've missed that out. Yes, I probably have, because this is a bit of an overview. I can't cover everything. So if you want to just mention something, you know, they say, oh, well, this is really interesting. If you want to recommend for somebody else to read it. But obviously, if you're going to go, well, you didn't put that in, because we know it's because you're angry and you need psychotherapy. So, you know, that's just, you're just outing yourself again after you've put your other stuff in about kink shaming. So, you know, just be aware. All right. Now, whether you like him or you don't, he is an influential immigrant. So we've talked about lots of people that we quite liked along the way, but actually sometimes we don't have to like people. They're still there. And that doesn't make them not interesting just because we don't like them very much. You know, we have to.
All right. Okay.
I'm trying to balance this a little bit.
I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. Don't worry.
You heard it here first. Sigmund Freud was an Australian neurologist.
Shlomo.
He's not Australian, babe. You keep calling him Australian. He's Austrian. He's not Australian.
Do it again.
You keep saying Australian.
Austrian neurologist, the founder of psychoanalysis, a clinical method for evaluating and treating pathologies, seen as originating in conflicts in the psyche, in which the work is done through dialogue between the patient and the psychoanalysis. Simply, it's a theory of how the mind works and a method of helping those in mental distress, which is Kat and Philippa at the moment. So he was born in Freiburg. Right, Freiburg in Moravia, which is now the town of, I can't pronounce that, in the Czech Republic. He was born on the 9th of May, 1856, to Jewish parents in the Austrian, not Australian, in the Austrian Empire. His father was Jacob Freud, who was a wool merchant with varying levels of success. And his mother was Jacob's third wife, Amalia Nathanson. So he took his father's sense of humour and his scepticism, and his mother was unrestrained in her love for him. He was her baby. He was her favourite child. She called him my golden Siggy. And this being the favourite child, Kat's face, is something that he believed would always give any child a sense of victory and help them to determine a successful life in the future. Unless maybe you're, it was a boy, you know, a boy mum. I don't know. Anyway. Jacob had two surviving children from his first marriage to a lady called Sally Kenner, Emmanuel and Philip. There were no children from his second marriage to a lady called Rachel. We don't know her surname. And he was the eldest of Jacob's and Amalia's 8 children. Followed by Julius, who sadly died in infancy. Then Anna, Regina. I got different names for these children. So Anna. And then Regina / Rosa, Maria or Mitzi, Esther / Dolphy, Pauline or Paula, and Alexander. So I don't know, some of them were like more shortened or pet.
Because they all do those weird nicknames. Oh, like this is my grandma Betty, but that's not her name. Her name's really Sarah. Why is she called Betty then? I don't know.
Well, that'd be Elizabeth, isn't it, Betty?
Yeah, but you know how like our great grandmother's generation, they all had these weird names, like which weren't their names. Oh, this is Binky. Is it? What's her name? Roberta. Is it? Why? Why is she Binky?
My old flatmate, his name is Ashley. And everyone, not me, but all the people of his called him Boothie. And one day I was like, wait a second, and none of them actually knew. I don't know if it had been that long or they'd been that drunk. I don't know, but nobody actually knew. So a similar thing, perhaps. I don't know. It's very, very strange. Right, in 1860, when he was 4, his father's business failed. I don't think his father was the most financially astute individual. And at that point, the family then moved to Vienna, which seemed like a bit like Popper, yeah, which seemed massive, noisy, and very cosmopolitan. And so he'd grown up in this sort of beautiful rural area with mountains and scenery. It was really, really quiet. And he always maintained that he absolutely loved this. This was a really happy part of his childhood. And I think he always, he missed it and he yearned for it a little bit, but he certainly probably preferred that, at least for a while. He went to school in Vienna and graduated in 1873, and then entered medical school at the University of Vienna, where he read physiology and neurology. He obtained a medical degree in 1881, and after graduating, he worked at the Vienna General Hospital and collaborated with another Viennese doctor, Joseph Breuer, who had a grounding in the empirical determinism of the Helmholtz, which is scientific determinism grounded in empirical evidence and the laws of nature. Okay, there we go. So scientific determination is the philosophical idea that every event, including human decisions,
Oh God,
is the inevitable result of prior causes governed by natural laws. Okay. Breuer was 15 years old. I think that's as hard as it gets. Breuer was 15 years older than Freud. He supported him while he was still a student. He shared ideas with him. He financially backed him quite a lot, which was a bit strange. And Freud's eldest daughter was, in fact, named after Breuer's wife. So that's quite nice. Breuer described his methods and results to Freud, who was fascinated by what Breuer had found out and was researching and what he told him. And they did a collaboration called Studies on Hysteria. So you can read this. It's a bit choice. I haven't gone into lots of detail on it here. It's a tad misogynistic. Cat, breathe. Do your breathing exercises. Anyway, it was published in 1895, and it was a foundational work that explored the psychological condition that we now call hysteria. Although there's never really been a full explanation, like consistently, of what hysteria actually was.
Because it's not real.
Okay, it's not my fault. Don't get hysterical. But it's not, the definition that the definitions, or that they got taken out of the DSM-4. Was it in the 90s? I don't think I wrote it down now. So it's not really. It's not a diagnosable thing or symptom anymore. But it was always
someone gets really pissed off. Like, is that right? So
it's basically the equivalent of when a man can have a reaction to something and put his fist through a wall and he's passionate, but a woman can go, "Don't fucking talk to me like that. She's hysterical." That's what hysteria is. It's women saying, "No, I don't like that." Oh well, she's hysterical. She's hysterical. I'm sorry. I can't have a credit card, and I've lived a life of servitude and drudgery to a man who is subpar in virtually every way, but I've been forced to marry him so that I could have a life. Oh, and I'm a bit upset about that situation.
And he doesn't do me well, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Because I think that's a big part of it.
Okay,
I'm going to sulk a little bit. Carry on. Sulking. Fucking hate him. Fucking hell.
He proposed that hysterical symptoms are symbolic representations of repressed traumatic memories. But, if you think, when we uncover traumatic memories, they can lead us to be very emotional. So, and these are often sexual repressed memories, and that have been banished from our consciousnesses. We suppress them because they are too painful for us to have to repeatedly play through in our minds. So the psychic energy from these memories converts itself into physical symptoms. Okay, and again, we do know sometimes that mental health conditions and repressions that can cause physical symptoms in the body. It's not that
they often do.
Yeah, exactly. So although a lot of this is abject nonsense, I think I could see the threads of some of it. You can see why the threads of some of it have stuck. Is kind of essentially. So right. It's because so Breuer told Freud he could treat the hysteria. I think if I say it quietly, maybe it's not so bad. By the recall of these painful experiences whilst the patient was under hypnosis. So we'd use this hypnosis to allow them to relax, to open the mind, and then they would be able to uncover all these repressed memories. And then once the memory and its associated effect became unleashed, revealed from the unconscious into the conscious, the symptom would vanish. All right. So the process of talking about the memories led it to become known as the talking cure. Oh, look, there it is. My emojis are very excited about that. And it was the precursor of psychoanalysis. So studies on hysteria is considered the first psychoanalytic work, which has led some people to argue that Breuer is actually the founder of psychotherapy. And it was just what Freud already sort of, a lot of what his was. I'll come to it in a second, but basically he did then turn his back on some of that, but it built from there. Hence some people saying that Breuer had implanted these ideas in Freud's mind, given them the seeds, and he'd grown something from that, and then just obviously took it off in his own direction. So
yeah, it doesn't seem to have come out. Yeah, comes from his ideas. He's developed them, which is interesting. There was a costume drama about a London hospital on years ago, and they covered things like there was a big, I don't think it was typhoid. No, it wasn't typhoid. There was like a sickness and diarrhea outbreak in kids. I remember that being one of the scenes before they knew about diuretic, diurolite, whatever. Anyway, and one of the side stories. Do you remember this, Kat? Then
I'm trying to get the name. I'm googling because I remember exactly, because there was another one set. There was the Nick set in America, which is very similar, but there's one set in Whitechapel. I think. Hang on.
Yes, I remember the Whitechapel one as well. So, but in this hospital, there was a doctor. So this sort of side storyline was going on, and he was treating women for hysteria. And he was treating them with, effectively, he'd come up with this invention, which we would recognise very much as a vibrator.
Oh yes, I'm coming to that. Yes.
Okay.
Was it Bramwell?
Oh, it was so long ago that I can't remember. It was really good, actually. I really enjoyed it.
There was Bramwell, which the premise was it was a lady doctor at an East End London hospital in the Victorian period.
This was definitely a male doctor, but he'd recognised that these women were basically frustrated. And perhaps they could be relieved with some fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, Catherine, that just reminded me.
Kat, do you want me to wait for you to finish Googling?
No, sorry. I'm sorry. I was just wondering because I remember this rings a bell. Because
you're going to
also
wake up at 3 a.m. tomorrow, aren't you? We're going to get some frantic group chats in the morning.
I remember these side stories, these themes about mental health. Hetty Feather, could it be Hetty Feather? These themes about mental health, they also appear in things like the Murdoch Mysteries, which is set in Toronto. So there's a hospital in that. There's an episode where there's a hospital in that, and it's an asylum, or it has asylum-like qualities, and they were pulling out the women's teeth to try and cure their insanity for some reason. And then I think it also features in the Nick as well, which is the Nick. The Nick has got Clive Owen in it. And that's also they also teach about the kind of the birth of anesthesia and also blood transfusions as well in the Nick. And cocaine addiction. Or morphine, cocaine. Clive Owen's character is addicted to some substance that he keeps taking and passing out from. Anyway, carry on about this shitbag.
Okay. So you may have heard of their most famous patient, Anna O, whose name was actually Bertha Pappenheim. She was a patient of Breuer's and was a key case study for him in Freud's developing his theories. So they diagnosed her with hysteria when she presented to them with visual disturbances, hallucinations, partial paralysis, and speech problems. She discussed her experiences and memories and found it very helpful. And she herself called it the talking cure. She said it really helped her. So these observations were instrumental in the development of psychoanalysis and the technique called free association, because basically you just talk. You talk about whatever comes up to you, and then the conversation, obviously, with the therapist happens. And so there's less structure. So free association, and then in that way things just come out, as they are released from the ether. So free association is a psychoanalytic technique where a patient speaks freely about whatever comes to mind without censorship to explore their thoughts and feelings. So that bypasses the defense mechanisms that the unconscious has put in place to reveal the person's inner world. And then you can work through the inner conflicts and gain self-understanding. In 1882, Freud got engaged to Martha Bernays, and they got married on the 14th of September, 1886. They had 6 children: Mathilde, Jean, or it was Jean Martin, but sometimes just called Martin, Oliver, Ernst, Sophie, and Anna. And you may have heard of Anna Freud. And it is this time he established his private practice in Vienna. Okay, in 1885, he moved to Paris and became the student of neurologist, Jean Charcot, I think is how you pronounce it. And in 1896, he abandoned, after his work with Charcot, the hypothesis element of this, and started using the long-term psychoanalysis to refer to this new clinical method. So now he was calling it psychoanalysis and the underlying theories behind it. So yeah, it was Jean-Martin Charcot. So he named his eldest son after him, was a celebrated 20th century neurologist. And he had the probably most profound effect on Freud's career, thought processes, I think, more than Breuer did. And so from October 1885 to February 1886, Freud was at I don't think I can pronounce it. It's a hospital in Paris anyway, at Charcot's famous neurology service, clinic, whatever. And he showed, so Charcot sort of moved it forward a bit, because he said, okay, psychological states rather than just physical ones could cause illness. And so rather than something happen to your body physically, like getting a virus and that making you ill, something psychological can go on and that makes you ill as well. We can probably agree with that. And that,
so they're coming up with this not knowing about things like cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah, presumably.
Which are physical reactions to.
Yeah, presumably. So this was very against a lot of the thinking of the time, but this led to Freud saying, right, I'm going to go and look at psychogenic illnesses now, like those that originate in the mind are like hysteria. So for Freud, hysteria was a psychological disorder that repressed trauma, especially from sexual abuse. And then that was converted into physical or emotional symptoms because the mind could not cope with the trauma. So the unconscious had to expel it somehow when it had been repressed. And so we get these other psychological or physical symptoms as a result, which I don't think is necessarily completely wrong. Just putting it out there. Not in the terms of hysteria, maybe, though. Perhaps that was a bit made up. So this was a real shift, because originally his intention, was to have studied brain anatomy. And that's kind of how we got to Breuer, we're looking at those same sorts of things. He became Charcot's student, and Charcot did a lot of very famous experimentations, demonstrations, soirees and things. And Freud went to quite a lot of those. So he really was quite hands-on with them. And again, this was all very crucial in the theory of in the development of his theories, especially those concerning the importance of the unconscious. So we're coming back to that all the time, and the connection between trauma, suggestion, and physical symptoms. So suggestion is perhaps an area where we need to be a little bit careful, because going, do you think it's this? Oh yes, it must be that. So but the foundation of development of psychoanalysis was well and truly laid, and he named his firstborn son after Charcot. The following year, Freud embarked upon self-analysis. This is a little bit like the early precursor to people who want to become therapists having to have therapy. But then when you're at the top, who therapises that therapist?
Who
Anyway,
decided who's at the top?
yeah, well,
you
on and on
suggesting-
it goes.
Are you suggesting therapy is some kind of weird pyramid scheme?
Yes. Don't feel better like that.
We're not saying that. We're not saying that, right?
No.
Therapy can be incredibly useful if you have the right therapist for you who is properly trained
Exactly.
and
But
using
if somebody
cutting edge
is saying
understanding.
that they will give you therapy if you send £10 worth of therapy to other people, then perhaps we
So
would
don't do that. Yeah,
do that.
you're in a cult. If that's happening, you're
Yeah.
in a cult.
It's a
leave
therapy
them.
Ponzi scheme, so you should probably leave that. Okay, the following year, Freud embarked on his self-analysis, and he said it was necessary for people to do this. It's a means of expanding your own mind and knowledge and testing the theory of mind. And again, I think that's, and learning how to be honest with yourself, improving your self-knowledge. And I do think there's a value in that, for your own benefit, but also practicing what you preach. Well, how did this work for you? I don't know. I haven't done it. It's a little bit of a shallow argument then. But this self-investigation, he took like what he'd got from that and what he'd learned from Boyle's original theory that neurosis was caused by early trauma. And that helped him develop his ideas about infantile sexuality and repression.
This is where he goes off the rails.
A bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say it's safe to Google. I mean, it is. But just choose your words carefully.
Yeah.
Freud's theory of sexuality and repression is widely known, and I can only really give it a really broad overview here. So hysteria was, of course, associated with women. Of course it was. And if you decide to look more thoroughly into how hysteria was described, diagnosed, viewed, treated, you will see it is on some spectacular level of misogyny.
Well, you know where the word comes from?
It's have I written it down?
Greek word for womb.
Yes.
Wandering womb.
Yeah.
So it's literally an idea that the womb can. It comes from the idea that the womb can roam around the body.
And the womb roams around. It's kind of independent of everything
Yeah,
else.
like it does,
It can go to your brain. They have this thing,
so-
like in the medieval period, they have this early modern period, they have this thing called the notion of the suffocation of the matrix, that the womb can like go up and essentially smother a woman to death because she's so essentially she needs a good firm fucking and that will sort her out.
So
he's not reciting new stuff like this.
Not everyone misogyny. Oh no, I don't want that.
This wild misogyny has been in place for centuries, like it's existed. He's just making it psychological.
Splendid example.
It makes hysteria a uniquely female. It can only be female, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes, I just put first rate. Greek hysteria is the Greek word for uterus. There has never been a well-defined definition, but historically it has been intertwined with society's perception of
You'll know when to see it.
Femininity, sexuality, religion, and mental health. So it's typed into those. Women with hysteria are treated with various methods, including a rest cure, which actually doesn't sound that bad, of isolation and inactivity. To be fair, a little bit of that here and there wouldn't go amiss. And from the late 19th century, the invention of mechanical vibrators for pelvic massage to induce hysterical paroxysm, the orgasm. But because they didn't want this to be considered sexual, they didn't want that. Some of the doctors actually deliberately cause physical pain to the women as well, so that it didn't look like it was a purely sexual thing. But anyway, so there we get vibrators from. So again, not all necessarily bad news. So other treatments include surgical procedures like hysterectomies, hydrotherapy, and even remedies based on Hippocratic theories such as marriage or pregnancy. So there we go. Right, now, we cannot overlook the Oedipus complex. Again, you can read about this. I had to tell you about this because it's fabulous.
Gives me the ick.
Okay. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the Oedipus complex. So this occurs apparently during the phallic stage. We'll talk a bit more about the stages of psychosexual development momentarily. And it involves a boy between age 3 and 6 becoming unconsciously sexually attached to his mother and hostile towards his father, who he views as a rival. And in the young boy, the Oedipus complex, or more correctly, conflict, arises because the boy develops unconscious sexual or pleasurable desires for his mother. Envy and jealousy are aimed at the father, who is the object of the mother's affection, obviously, as her partner, and attention.
It's hysterical, he's not.
Hang on a moment, I've said something in this. So these feelings for the mother and rivalry towards the father lead to fantasies of getting rid of his father and taking the place of him to be with his mother. The hostile feelings towards the father led to castration anxiety, an irrational fear that the father will castrate, i.e. remove the bits and pieces, as punishment for his desires. The resolution of the Oedipus complex typically occurs through the process of identification with the same-sex parent. Boys identify with their fathers, internalize their values, attitudes, and behaviors. And this leads to the development of masculine gender identity and the eventual resolution of the complex or conflict. The father becomes a role model and a rival. And through his identification with the aggressor, boys acquire the superego, which we'll come back to, and the male sex role. The boy substitutes his desire for his mother with his desire for other women. And then the female, the equivalent for females is the Electra complex. So
it makes you wonder what his relationship with his, like, is this projection? Is this him explaining?
Oh my God!
He was. We said he was the favorite. She blatantly doted on him, and
the accusation is always the confession. Freud wanted to fuck his mum, and he wanted to make it seem okay. This is it. The accusation is the confession. That's what's happening.
There's the clip.
Yeah.
Okay.
31 minutes in.
Yeah.
For later. Okay, so in the coming years and decades, Freud's clinical work with his patients, among them the famous Dora, Ratman, and Little Hands, who I'll come back to, would remain the basis. Dora, so his famous case studies, Dora, Ratman, and Little Hands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And would remain the basis and core of his work and would provide the vital material for his continual advancement and refinement of his theory of the mind. So here are a few more key points in Freud's theories and timeline. In 1900, he published The Interpretation of Dreams, which I've got over there somewhere. I did read that. It was a bit of a mindfuck, which detailed his theory on the unconscious mind. Again, and was heavily influenced by his self-reflection work. The unconscious mind contains suppressed sexual and aggressive impulses that influence behavior. And in this, he claims that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious that reveal hidden wishes through desires and symbolic language. I don't know what people think about dream analysis. I don't know. Not everybody who does dream analysis will do it from a Freudian perspective, though. Like, you know,
I think the idea that dreams are telling you something, I think, is overrated. Like, it could be that something on your mind could be random, like firing synapses that just, you know, bring some.
When it comes to dream analysis and their meanings, I'm in the position that we know so little about actually how the mind really works that I agree that, broadly speaking, from what we know now, they just seem like random firing of synapses. However, if we do think of the mind as being akin to some kind of supercomputer, that sort of defrag potentially has some wider purpose, and our capacity to remember those moments potentially has some wider purpose that we don't. I'm prepared to acknowledge that they may have significance that we don't yet quite understand, because there's a lot of shit with the brain that we don't. We are so on such a short part of the journey to our understanding of the mind that really and truly it's possible.
I will give you a sort of quite a personal example of that. So when I was growing up, my mum had a boyfriend who was absolutely awful to me, absolutely awful. And then they did split up eventually. Not because he was horrible to me. That wasn't a factor. But over the years, I would have quite a lot of dreams about that situation. And to start with, I would be very, very upset. No one would listen. Nobody would buy me any heed. And then over the years, and I haven't had one of these dreams for years with this guy in it, but then over the years, the dreams gradually changed where I was still upset, but I wasn't crying. And then it got displaced by anger. And then it got to a point in the dream where I was just like, do you know what? You two are both dickheads. You can just fuck off. I'm not interested anymore. So it was almost like that over time, as I did whatever I must have done to sort of work through this, that it feels like there was that pattern within my dream work that actually happened. So I don't know. Make of that what you will. But if you choose to read the interpretation of dreams, bring a cloth to mop up your brain as it melts.
I agree with Kat.
It wasn't an easy read, not because it just wasn't an easy read. It was a bit like walking through treacle, you know.
Yeah, there's something to it. Like there's this idea now that your brain washes itself at night. Same way as your muscles get rid of, like if you move around, you've got your lymphatic system, which you have to move around to drain and get moving. It doesn't have its own propulsion. Your brain needs to wash out like your muscles, like your lymphatic system does. And that is one of the functions of sleep, because remembering we also don't currently understand very much about why we sleep, why we need to sleep for so long. We all know that we feel rough when we don't have it and much better when we do have it. We all know that if you go to bed late, you feel worse than if you manage to go to sleep early, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, but the idea of interpreting meaning to them, that's the bit where I'm like, nah, hang on, I think that's
especially because, you know, it's very individually open to interpretation. Well, that's happening to me, so it must mean that. But also, if you look at like dream dictionaries and all things like that, there's often a theme. If you dream about X, that means Y. But sometimes different things will tell you different things, and I'm a bit like,
yeah. But also, if you see one magpie or you see two, it's supposed to have an impact literally on the things that are going to happen to you today.
Yeah,
it's in the same realm for me as that.
It's a bit woolly, isn't it? Really, I think is a good way to describe it. So
yeah, I do wonder if it's perhaps there is a significance in the fact, because we are all dreaming all the time. But the things that we remember, the things that we think about when we wake up, having dreamt them, maybe there is some significance in that, because at some point our unconscious mind and our conscious mind, our sleeping and our waking minds, have found this significant enough that one is remembering it when it doesn't normally. That may have some meaning. I don't know.
Recurring dreams. Anyway. Dreams. Yes, interesting, but not interesting, but interesting. In 1905, he published 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, which argued that sexuality is a powerful force that starts in infancy and is present throughout life and is not just there in adulthood for procreation. So it was often thought that sexuality was just there because it drives us to procreate, and he was saying no, that's not the case. Now, if you want to take it back as far as infancy, but I think it's not unfair to say that sexuality doesn't, once you're an adult, it doesn't just exist for procreation.
No, so, I do find the kind of
is disturbing.
I do find his focus on who little babies want to subconsciously or maybe consciously fuck. I find that weird and unnecessary.
It's a gateway to behavior that we can't talk about on the internet.
Yes.
Or even mention the word of.
It introduced one of the distinction between and again, right? It introduced, amongst other things, the link between adult sexual perversions and childhood experiences, and the psychosexual stages: oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. Also in the same year, he published Jokes and Their Relation to the Unconscious. And here he argues that jokes, like dreams and slips of the tongue, so Freudian slips, are like psychological release valves to repressed thoughts, desires, and conflicts. They allow us to temporarily lift our inhibitions rather than having to use psychic energy to keep thoughts repressed. And you could argue, people working really serious. Sorry?
Did he not know about alcohol? Like, there's a shortcut to this.
Well, no, but think about people that work in certain professions. So like when I used to work in a forensic psychiatric unit, like a locked hospital, and we would sometimes make jokes about a lot of things that people would probably think were really inappropriate for the client group that we were working with, but it's just like people who work in lots of situations, it's a diffusion, isn't it?
Yeah. The
So
emergency services, people
and
like that.
Freud is, I think maybe in that case, maybe it is a little bit of, do you know what, light relief's not quite the expression is that I think is required, but I think that's what you're saying, and we all know the expression Freudian slip as well. So they should just do had, then they can swear and shout and rant as much as they like. That's the problem. They had no had in their lives. That's what they needed. 1908 saw the first International Psychoanalytical Congress. 1910 saw the foundation of the International Psychoanalytical Association with Carl Jung as its first president. Now, you could bang on about Carl Jung quite a lot, because it is relevant, but this is not what it's about. So just very briefly, Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist, psychotherapist, and psychologist who founded the School of Analytical Psychology. So he's often quite closely associated with Freud, but they had some fundamental differences in their beliefs and the way they approached these things. So Jung looked at lifelong psychological growth and spirituality. So rather than when it kind of happened in your childhood and then we need to move it on from there. So this was a lifelong developing thing. And he talked more about spirituality and that side of things. And he was more meaning centered. And his work has been more influential in things like personality testing and all stuff like that. So yeah, he's quite interesting as well if you want to look him up. In 1920, he published, this we're back to Freud again, Beyond the Pleasure Principle, and he introduces us to his concept of the death instinct or drive, also known as thanatos, from the Greek personification of death. Eros is the life instinct, conversely, so which he'd mentioned before. So this discusses the tendency towards destruction, often expressed through acts like aggression, compulsion, and self-destruction, which,
These are observable things in people, in humans.
Yes.
So self-destruction, it is a big thing. And then, of course, presumably say you're aggressive because this happened and that happened, and In 1923, he published The Ego and the Id, which are concepts I think most people have heard of. So the id is the primitive, instinctual part of the personality that's just driven by instinctual base things like immediate gratification for food, sex, things like that.
Your chimp brain, we call it now.
Chimp brain, that reminds me of that book, but that's not. Anyway, and the ego is the realistic and rational part. Might perhaps not argue that, but it mediates between the id's demands and the external world. So we're trying to meet our inherent desires, but there's things in the external world that prohibit that. Like, I know that person's really annoying, but you can't go and like smash their in because that's not allowed. So things like that. So it was trying to balance these two things. The id and the ego are trying to balance these two things, which of course I haven't actually put this in my notes, but they're going to get like that's going to vary over history, and even in the same points in history it's going to vary across cultures, isn't it? So I suppose that's another thing to think about. So this was his model of the mind, the id versus the ego, and he later introduced the concept of the super ego, which is our moral conscience. And I think we all know people who don't have one of those. In 1930, he published Civilization and Its Discontents, which I'm sure will be an ongoing work for people all over the world, in which he argues that civilization's rules and structures are a source of unhappiness. We're going back a little bit to the ego and the id, aren't we? Because they suppress the innate human instincts for pleasure, aggression, and sexuality.
So this sounds like man doesn't like laws.
Well, yeah, which is everyone in a way, isn't it? We all want to be able to go out and do whatever we want, but we don't want other people to be able to go out and do whatever they want.
Yeah, but with reference to our previous concerns about his his focus.
It's all coming back round, isn't it? In 1933, the followers of Moustache Man, who wore a lot of brown, publicly burned some of Freud's books. They didn't like a lot of what he was saying. And then following the annexation of Austria in 1938, so very close to that mark, he moved to London with his daughter Anna, where he remained until his death on the 23rd of September 1939. So obviously he had Jewish origins, and he didn't want to go. But in the end, people said to him, tickety tock, it's not looking great. You should probably fuck off. And he was in the end, he was like, yeah, all right then. He had, so in terms of his death, he had been suffering from jaw cancer. And his death was brought, for quite a long time. It was pretty grim. And his death was brought about by a lethal dose of morphine, which he requested from his physician. And their London home, where he died, is now the Freud Museum. And his daughter Anna had a lot to do with setting that up. And I think she was a therapist as well, wasn't she? Okay, so this is a tough one. Because on the one hand, we're looking at a thing like the Oedipus complex and we're going, what in the literal fuck is wrong with you? But on the other hand, as we touched upon, we can see some of the things where we're going, well, yeah, we can see a thread in that. We can see why that can work. We can see why this has stuck and is still used today. And as somebody who has had a bit of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a little bit of talking therapy worked much better for me. Just as a person.
No doubt. I'm not denying that at all. Denying that at all.
But then, of course, CBT will work better for other people. It's just, so I think what I'm saying is whilst there was some absolutely suspect lunacy going on here, there are things that we can take that have become valuable. It's just a shame that we got to them like that. So this is difficult. Yeah. We can see how some of the conclusions make sense and how his methods get applied successfully. Mostly. However, this work is surrounded by the controversy. And also there is had a lot of work, a lot of criticisms against it, not just for that, but for the following 8 reasons. 1, lack of empirical evidence.
Yeah.
Okay? He used clinical studies and his own interpretation. So we talked about this when I talked about Popper last time. How with Freud, you can go, I want to find this, therefore I can. Okay, so he had case studies and he took from these case studies own interpretations rather than using controlled and empirical research. So many of these concepts cannot be tested or verified scientifically. And that goes back to what Philippa was saying about pseudoscience. Back to Popper again, his theories were unfalsifiable. So there is no way they can be proved wrong. There is an overemphasis on sex as the primary driver of human behavior, particularly in early childhood. He also had an overemphasis on the unconscious, which oversimplified human behavior. So everything happened here. It will all be explained by what's cracked off and trapped in your unconscious. It's deterministic. So saying personality is largely fixed in and by early childhood experiences like breastfeeding and toilet training downplays the ability for change and development through life. It is not all just about what happened in this critical. We know that those sort of areas are critical ages for development, but not necessarily just in the ways he mentioned. And there is a huge gender bias in his theories, with them being widely criticised as reflecting male-centric views and sexism. But then I suppose at the time it wouldn't have been viewed like that, would it?
No.
His theories were developed Eurocentrically and are therefore not applicable to all cultures. And number 8, by now his ideas have been superseded by more modern psychological ones and research that has a lot stronger empirical foundation. I would say with that though, yes, obs. However, that applies to so many things. That isn't specific to him. The fact that superseded by more testable and therefore better stuff. So it is a criticism. It is something to take into consideration, but it isn't a criticism that could be fairly leveled just to him. Or
no, there's a context there. Of
all sorts of, right now, there's just a little bit of comedy. I use the word comedy very loosely, and Kat should probably cover her ears. And I think Philippa will just go, right, exactly. So I will highlight some of these concerns by bringing us back to the case studies I mentioned earlier. Dora, Little Hands, and Rat Man. So these were 3 the observations and what Freud drew from these observations were these were very big things that were developed into his theories. He used this a lot. So Dora was an 18-year-old girl treated briefly by Freud in 1900. Her symptoms were a nervous cough, loss of voice, and depression. She was brought to Freud by her father, who she accused of offering her to a family friend in exchange for the friend's wife's sexual favours, so basically a swapsies. Freud's analysis of this case was his first major case history, and he used it to demonstrate dream interpretation in analysis. Not too horrific. Little Hans was a 4-year-old boy treated by Freud indirectly through his father, who was a member of the psychoanalytic community. His symptoms were, it's not funny, just because it's ridiculous, were a fear of horses after witnessing an accident. Okay, if you see a horrible accident with a horse, you'd get that. Okay. Freud interpreted the boy's fear of horses as a phobia of the large genitals of animals and linked it to the Oedipus complex, which is the theory that a young boy's sexual desire for his mother and feelings of rivalry towards his father.
So he's now
he's kind of his dad's horse dick. His dad's got a horse dick. No.
Stop saying it out loud. Please stop saying it. Please stop saying it. Stop. Make it stop. Philippa, make it stop. And last of all, Rat Man. A 29-year-old man who first came to Freud in 1907. His real name was Ernst Lanzer.
Well, Rat Man.
Bizarrely, not Rat Man was not on his birth certificate. His symptoms were obsessional fears and violent impulses. The patient's symptoms were so severe that they were linked to a traumatic story about rats and torture that he heard in the military, which Freud connected to his patient's other anxieties, including castration fears. So that, everybody, is a reasonable amount of Sigmund Freud.
Look, here's my real beef, right? And some of the beef that I have is not really his fault. But like you said, his stuff has been superseded by later investigations. However, I don't know whether he's so good at branding terms. The issue for me is that Sigmund Freud's nonsense, the most nonsensy parts of it, have so permeated a kind of consciousness that they are used as a shorthand in a way that means that there is something that feels like the culture has accepted them as fact. The damage that I believe that his theories and his work continues to do to, for example, women getting the healthcare they deserve, because even if he has been widely discredited, this notion of women being somehow psychologically more prone to hysteria and thus psychosomatic conditions, how many times has a woman gone to her GP and been dismissed as it being all in her head? Far too fucking many. And I believe that in part, that is the legacy of Freud. And countless other things, and countless other misogynies, of course. But it doesn't fucking help. Freud doesn't help.
No.
Oh, no, God, no.
He, like you said about him finding the end point, really, and then everything fits back to it. I mean, literally, the Oedipus complex is the Oedipus myth. Like,
yeah.
So it's not just based on it; he's just repeating it as if that is something that
it makes me feel unwell.
But it's an ancient Greek myth, and he just rewrites it as if it's a human psychological phenomena that he has no evidence for. And then, like, what's he basically saying about every mother-son relationship?
Well, the thing is, though, we use these terms on top. Like another one that I was listening to somebody who works in kind of crime, like forensic psychology, and we all use the phrase Stockholm syndrome, right? And we understand that to mean that a person falls in love with their captor. That is not what happened in the Stockholm event. That's not what happened. There's no evidence of that ever fucking happening. What there is evidence of is somebody looking to the person who holds the gun and seeing what they want them to do, because that fucker holds a gun. Like this notion that if you're kept captive for long enough, you might fall in love with your captor, the Beauty and the Beast syndrome, the Stockholm syndrome.
Beauty and the Beast.
The Stockholm event didn't happen like that. It's been misremembered. And that's the thing. Some of the stuff that is taken as being Freudian or whatever isn't even what he fucking said. It's been misremembered and then added on to the damaging stuff that he was putting forward. Okay. I can literally feel my blood pressure rising.
Okay. Well, I'll if it helps, I'll try and stay away from more sciencey people. And
you're banned. You're banned. Next year, you're banned from science. You're banned from sciences next year. Banned.
In a
Veto.
roundabout sort of way, I've quite enjoyed it.
What? Because you love making me have this face a lot.
In a very roundabout way, you've enjoyed it.
It's made me just think a lot, you know, and in different ways, and contemplate stuff, which is useful, isn't it? The fact that your reactions after the first one, though, were amusing. I can't lie. There was an added layer of entertainment on it after that. But yeah.
Right.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
I'm very, very grateful for you.
I sing it through. I love you. I just don't like him. Oh,
that's
right.
Fair.
So
that's
thank
fair.
you.
That's not unfair. That's not unfair. So actually, this is the end.
It's the end of 2025. Yes,
the end of 2025. Philippa, what's happening next year?
Next year, yes, we're moving on to series 8 of Had.
Jesus,
I know.
8.
Series 8. Well, because our first 2 series lasted the year. Series 1 and series 2 is the Gits and the Heroes, and then we've in a quick succession we've got through our other series. But so we're back. Well, we're going to come back and do a live to say Happy New Year on the 7th of Jan. So we'll be back on the 7th of Jan live. And then we will be going into a series on executed people. I don't know if we want to rename that, but anyway.
It's not a very,
That's a working title, friends. It's a working title. It might be one that gets used.
But it also
maybe it'll be beheaded baddies. Beheaded baddies. But they might want to be beheaded. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Gallows geeks.
Yeah, we'll have to see who we come up with and see if we can find a theme other than just that.
Or if you've got a suggestion, pop it in the comments.
Yeah, let us know.
Help us name the series. So so that's where we'll be.
If you do, you'll win a prize. You'll win the prize of naming the series.
Boom. There you go.
There we go.
There you are.
So that's that. Kat, tell us the other things.
Yeah, please give us an early Christmas present. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, hit all in the drop down that will appear. Make sure you comment, share it out. Just, interact with it, because that makes YouTube happy, and it might mean that we get shared to more people, and thus we will have more people to chat with in the comments, which will be lovely and fun. You can also tell us you've enjoyed what you've watched with money. If you come to www.buymeacoffee.com/had podcast, there is a QR code there. Look at that. Isn't that delightful?
Philippa
that is a place where you can purchase Winnebagos. That helps us, but also you can join our close friends. And if you do that, then when you are on Instagram, you will see a green light around our logo. That means you're a close friend. It also means that Catherine has found something, like the loyal cat that has brought you in a decapitated, suppurating mouse as a gift. That's what she's brought for you, and it's some inveterate filth that she's found on the internet that she will be sharing. It'll be a good time. Also, we have got other things that you can do. You can come over to our Substack, which is historyafterdarkhub.substack.com. That's where you can find out what we're up to. You can find links to our merch, whether that's our Conflict Resolution merch, our Had merch, our Rough Beaver merch, our Timmy the Problem merch, our War Boner merch, all that good
Nice.
stuff.
Yep.
That's there too. It's also where you can listen to us as a podcast. On the podcast, though, no subscribing. So do give us 5 stars and a lovely comment. If you don't think it's worth 5 stars, that doesn't need to be shared. Shh. Santa's watching. Behave. Now then. Also, if you go into the description box, you will find our other social medias. If you would like to, you may follow us over there. Now, don't get excited because we don't tend to swear. Philippa did once, but we don't tend to swear over on our individual social medias. Who knows? 2026 could be the year of filth for that too. But either way, we hope you've had a wonderful 2025 and that your 2026 will be as good and hopefully better. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas or happy holidays, however you choose to celebrate, if you celebrate, and also a very healthy, wealthy, and delightful new year. I think that's everything.
Thank you for sticking with us all this time. Like, we really appreciate it.
We do.
Because we hardly stick with ourselves sometimes. So the fact that you guys,
I'm always coming apart.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
Thank you, everyone, and happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Yes. And we are now in the last push for you until Christmas. So there is still time if you're on the naughty list to get onto the nice list. But to do that, Santi is watching.
Yeah.
You got to be good. If you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, look out because he's watching. But certainly don't get caught. We're going to love you and leave you. See you all in 2026. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.